Good evening, everybody. It's 9:30 on the East Coast, 6:30 on the West Coast. On a Monday, it must be, man, I'm super out of practice and still recovering from a little bit of illness there. So, um, uh, I apologize, James, for my less than stellar introduction. I feel like I'm a little bit rusty. Anyway, it's
It's
a Monday
okay.
night, so how are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. It's okay. You're playing as they say in sports, you're playing injured tonight,
A little
so
bit.
it's okay,
Okay.
you
All
know.
right. All right.
Yeah, you've been dealing with a cold. From my last like when we last talked yesterday, you're dealing with a cold you've had it for like 11 days, something like that, right?
It's been lingering for sure, and a huge part of it. I mean, this is why we weren't on last Monday. I was actually in Dallas last Monday. Um, I was attending a DreamHack there in the city. We were showing off the game I'm working on, Barony, and that was very exciting. I had a really really good time. I was sick for the entirety of it, um, but I think it started as a sinus infection because when we landed in Dallas, um, I ended up having to we ended up sitting on the tarmac for 2 hours because they didn't have any available gates, I guess. And you know, I was sitting in 2 hours and just, I mean, it was full. It was a totally full flight. And when the plane's not moving, it's not well ventilated, and all you can smell is kerosene in the cabin. And it was not a fun experience. And the next morning I woke up and I could feel my sinuses burning, right? And and then I think like just because I was so compromised on that front, on the last day of the con, I suspect I picked up a cold because me and one of my other coworkers who came with me, we started showing symptoms at the same time the next
Oh
day.
no.
And so I think we just like the whoever was infected breathed on us at the same time. And so I went from a sinus infection because no one in the house, because I was with three coworkers renting an
Mhm.
Airbnb. No one was in the house got sick from me initially, right? And then one or two of our coworkers weren't at the booth for part of the day on the last day. And so I bet like in that time that they were enjoying the show floor, that's when the sick person came over and got me and my coworker infected. And so I went from a sinus infection to a cold, and now I'm finally getting over all of that, and it is just total chaos.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you're healed up and left to at least do a stream tonight, and then we can get back to our normal. That part's good.
Yeah,
You sound fine except for the sniffles. I mean,
yeah,
obviously you
yeah.
sound.
I
You're not
mean,
going to be able to sing baritone tonight or bass or
no,
whatever
no, no.
alto or whatever you want to do. No singing performance from Eric tonight.
No singing for me. It would be too nasally and congested. I can't even articulate words properly right now. But how are you doing on this lovely Monday evening, James?
I'm doing great. It's overcast here in LA, but weather's always typically pretty chill, at least in West LA. So
Mm-hmm.
it's all good on my side. And I guess I'll jump in and start working on stuff tonight while we hang out.
Okie
So
dokie.
I will jump ahead. All right, so I'm going to focus on Mayor tonight, on a couple of different poses and views. So he has a three-quarters view right here.
Mm-hmm.
So I might try to work on that tonight as well as his profile view. So as we look in our Mayor library, we do have a three-quarters view. I might be able to get away with doing this version. I'm not sure yet. I'll kind of have to put in this shot and go from there. But I am going to have to make a profile view for him tonight.
Okay.
So I'll be working on that tonight while we chat about whatever.
Yeah, I don't know, man. It's been busy and I've been sick. I haven't been to see a movie recently. Not that there's anything crazy exciting out that I'm looking for. Um, and I've been playing a few games here and there. I think maybe the most interesting thing is I got a Steam Deck, which is Valve's sort of handheld game console PC hybrid thing,
The
and
latest and greatest.
it is really cool, man. It's really fun. I've been playing with it a lot. It's a remarkably powerful little device. Um, and it's got a bunch of really cool features. It's got these two haptic touch pads that are really, really sensitive, and the haptic technology underneath it is unlike anything I've ever seen. And they're fully customizable. I mean, the degrees to which you can customize the inputs on the Steam Deck, it's really remarkable how much flexibility you have to play around and really, really customize um, the way you interact with the game. I just for to see if it would work, I downloaded the original Descent. You know that game from like
Hmm.
1991 or something, 92. I don't even remember.
Classic.
Yeah, it's a classic, and it works on PC, but I wasn't like I'm running a Windows system, not a and Steam Deck is built on I think Linux,
Hmm.
and but yeah, it ran just fine. The the way the game executes is it's in a sort of a DOS emulator, and it actually launches the DOS emulator and then launches the game, right? But it worked. It launched. The funny thing is Descent is so old, it doesn't have a mouse and key. I mean, it doesn't have controller inputs, right?
Hmm.
And so the
Hmm.
first thing you have to do is basically build from scratch an input profile, right? So you go into the settings and you go, okay, this button is equivalent to the enter key, and this button is equivalent to the space key, and this is equivalent to left mouse button and right mouse button. And it took me, I don't know, about an hour of tweaking and fiddling. But I built what I think is a really fun controller input system for Descent, complete with on the haptic touchpads. One of the ways you can customize them is you can create sort of this radial menu that turns on, that appears on the screen as an overlay. And the way you change buttons in Descent is 1 through 9, right? And I set it up so that on each of the haptics, there's a radio pad that goes 1 through 5 and 6 through 0. And you just move your hand in a circle, highlight the correct one, tap the haptic pad, and it basically it mimics that you are touching the 1 button or the 6 button. It's crazy. And beyond that, like you can also, unlike most games, I mean, it's really crazy. You can do compound button binding. So, for instance, I mapped quick save, which in Descent is Alt F2. I mapped that compound button input to a single button, and it works great. It works perfectly well. I mean, it blew my mind how
Hmm.
robust the custom controller setup system is.
Yeah, the fact that you were able to use DOS and then do key bindings for a DOS game,
Yeah,
that blew my mind when you were telling me about that.
yeah, it
So
is
does that mean that
wacky.
you could pretty much apply that same, like, does it act as a overlay so any other DOS game will kind of respect the bindings that you have, and or do you have to keep doing it per game
I mean,
kind
it,
of a
it, it
thing?
is on a per game basis.
Okay.
Yeah, so and especially for Descent because it's a 360-degree first person shooter, it's got such an odd input
Hmm.
system.
Yeah,
That
that's
being
true.
said, any first person shooter in the Doom era or the Duke Nukem era or the Quake era, they all have pretty similar of those
Hmm.
generations. They all have pretty similar control layouts, right? And so you
Hmm.
could conceivably put together a generic first person shooter mouse and keyboard conversion to controller mapping, and it would work pretty generically across any old school DOS first person shooter that didn't have native controller input support.
Hmm.
But it's
And
crazy, and,
now,
and there's no latency, there's no hiccups, I haven't seen any bugs. It just works. It works out of the box with no hurdles, no jumps.
so now the next question is, what other emulation can you do on that on a Steam Deck? I mean,
You know,
can you do like an Intellivision, Coleco? Can you do all this old school 80s type of? I mean, I'm sure they're out there. I mean, I
yeah,
never looked myself, but
I'd have to
yeah.
research it. I mean, so two things. Obviously the main when you boot, it boots into Steam, right? And
Hmm.
so you're booting into basically just Steam's storefront, and their sort of their platform, right? And so just if you're just using it as a, casual user, you're not really going to see any of that option. But the Steam Deck also has a full desktop mode that you can boot into if you want to. And it's, I mean, I haven't futzed around with it much at this point. I don't really have a lot of reason to. I'm using the Steam Deck as a game console effectively. Um, but conceivably, I mean, it has web browsers. It comes pre-installed with Firefox on it, and it also has a micro SD card slot. I don't see any reason with that there you shouldn't be. I don't see any reason why you couldn't install your own, emulator onto the Steam Deck if you so choose.
Hmm.
I haven't played
And
around with it.
yeah, here's other these are other just geeky
Yeah.
kind of questions. But so the Steam Deck, does it have a touch screen where you can
Yes.
touch on it, tap?
Yeah.
All right. And then there's a lot of digital pens out there that are like EMR type pens that are out there that you might be able to use on certain screens, but it's so hit or miss. But
Yeah.
I mean, as in doing creative stuff and drawing, if you found a way to put a drawing type of app on Linux on your Steam Deck, I'm wondering if you can turn it into your own little portable drawing device. But I mean, like I already have my phone and I already
Right.
can draw on that just fine in Android. So, but that's more of a nice to have. It's not a must. But I'm just curious, how far can you go down the rabbit hole and actually start turning it into a little production device? You know?
It's an excellent question, and I think that the answer is you could go all the way down the rabbit hole if you want to.
Really?
One of my coworkers, who is, an artist on our project, he he's got a Steam Deck too, and he's going to start playing around with seeing how. Yeah, he had the exact same thought as you did, and I haven't followed up with him yet, but he said he's going to see if he can turn it into sort of a workstation that he can use while he's on a plane traveling places, right?
I mean, yeah, it's hilarious. I mean, we live in, we obviously live in an exciting time. There's all kinds of really cool tech out there to do. Like I said, I could do it on my phone. I can even do 3D apps on this phone. It's crazy, what you can do. But man, if you have a game console that you're playing, you play a game and you just kind of cancel out and you just go and
Mm-hmm.
start drawing on the same device. You don't have to switch devices.
Mm-hmm.
That's almost game changer. Like I know, like I have the iPad Pro. That OS is a little bit different than the Mac OS. Here I am drawing using Flash and stuff like that, but or Animate. But the iOS you have to pretty much have separate apps for your iPad Pro. But it is kind of bridging the gap. There's some companies out there like Affinity Designer. They're owned by Canva. They're doing like a like they're translating their apps to all devices, all within the same ecosystem, which is really cool. But they're kind of far and few between. Right now, you have to live in this farm and you have to go and do their stuff over here. You have to do stuff over here. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but I know with Linux, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff out there that's already been kind of set up, and the fact that it's just a Linux system, um, I found that really exciting actually.
Yeah.
That you just kind of leave. What is it called? Big Picture? Is that what they call their Steam
Yeah.
OS? Or
On PC it's called Big Picture mode, and
Mhm.
basically on the Steam Deck that's the native app, is it just basically runs in
Okay,
Big Picture mode. Yeah.
okay, yeah, um,
My problem with
yeah, that's pretty.
my problem with Big Picture on PC is it basically just takes over your machine, right?
Uh-huh.
And on my PC, I don't. It's designed Big Picture mode. It's designed to be on a TV where you're not sitting a couple of feet from it, right? Um,
Hmm.
and or in the case of the Steam Deck, where you just like that's what the resolution is set up for, is larger buttons and that kind of interaction. I don't really find much utility for it in on a PC though, but on the Steam Deck it works great, and it's exactly what I'm looking for.
So now, is this going to become your new? Is this just a toy, or is this kind of like your new go-to device for playing games now?
I mean, honestly, it is a little column A, a little column B. I feel like there is, definitely a novelty to it right now that I'm enjoying. I mean, everybody loves, when they get a new toy, right? Um,
Sure.
but I mean, I'm still through and through a Nintendo fanboy, and I'm playing through Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door right now on the
Hmm.
Switch, and that I think is what I'm mostly playing. But I did download Fallout 4 onto the Steam Deck, and it works great. I mean, like no
Hmm.
hitches whatsoever. Plays at a visual fidelity that I think is very, very reasonable. And I did the same thing. Uh, Capcom, obviously, they announced Monster Hunter Wilds last week, and or not, they didn't announce it, but they showed some of the first gameplay stuff, and in collaboration with that, or in coordination with that, they put Monster Hunter World and Iceborne on sale, and the whole package was like $25 with all of the DLC or a bunch of DLC, not all of it. Um, and I was like, okay, I don't even remember the last time I turned on my PS4. The last time I turned on my PS4, I spent like 4 hours doing updates, and by the time it finished updating, I had forgotten why I turned it on in the first place, right? Um,
Hmm.
and so I was like, oh, okay, screw it. So I bought Monster Hunter World, and I've been playing that in bed, like going on a couple of hunts before falling asleep at night. And again, it works great, right? It's the I was playing around with seeing it, like if I could do some sort of custom input for Monster Hunter World, and you can any game. It doesn't matter if it's an emulated DOS game or a full featured game like Monster Hunter World. But the difference is that Monster Hunter World was built with a controller in mind, and
Hmm.
so there's nothing really to add that they didn't already think about, right? You're like, oh, I guess I could add a radio menu. Nope, Monster Hunter World already has radio menus. You don't need to worry about
Yeah.
that, right? There's all
Yeah.
these things that you can think of, and it's like, no, the game has a really perfectly reasonable implementation of that already. Like, I don't need to reinvent the wheel when what they have included already works. Um,
Hmm.
but suffice it to say, just the fact, I mean, it's an exciting feature. And every time I turn on a game, I start thinking about ways that maybe how could I customize this to do some sort of niche thing that the UX doesn't do natively, right? Um, it's really cool. Those two haptic pads are really, really compelling pieces of technology.
Yeah. I mean, just from what you're telling me, and I can kind of, I get the sense you're pretty excited about it. As far as the hardware, it's been a while since hardware's been game changery. Like the last time it felt like it kind of did that was when the Wiimotes came out, kind of thing. Like, whoa, it
Hmm.
blows your mind, kind of thing, right? But with what you're telling me, with what the Steam Deck's doing, that's I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I've been in a cave. I haven't really paid attention to Steam Deck since it launched because I didn't.
Uh-oh. OBS disconnected. What's going on
Oh,
here?
really?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Let me see if I can see our
Okay,
channel.
reconnection established. Hold on, let's see if we're it seems like we're seeming, ladies and gentlemen, I apologize if you're getting some weirdness right now, both from us talking and on your stream. Okay, it seems like we're back live again. I don't know. OBS just randomly disconnected for some reason. I don't know
Huh.
why. I think I'm having maybe some internet stuttering on my end. It's not clear to me. It seems like everything is working correctly now, though, so we will continue. Um, but no, I don't know how much we lost. But yeah, so to your point about those haptic pads, um, this was back in like 2012 era. Valve did their first attempt into the hardware space, and it was called the Steam Deck or the Steam Box, and
Hmm.
it came with a very very unique controller. Um, it didn't have a D-pad or any thumbsticks. It had these two cups that were these haptic cups,
Hmm.
and you could move your fingers around inside these haptic cups, and
Wow.
um,
Okay.
it supported all it supported a lot of the things, if not all of the things that the Steam Deck does now. Now, I never really got into the Steam box. It never really got that much out of beta phase. They mailed them to a few people. They sort of abandoned the idea of a proprietary box and started working with some PC manufacturers on making it more of a platform standard, right? But the
Hmm.
thing that stuck around for a long time was the controller, and I got a little bit of a chance to play with it, and I thought, oh, this is pretty cool, whatever. And then the Steambox sort of faded from existence before you could really, before it really had any impact. Um,
Hmm.
but I never really forgot those little haptic cups. I thought they were an interesting experiment. And so when I saw that the Steam Deck had those pads, I was like, okay, this seems like the next evolution of it. In fact, it was. Um, Interestingly, a lot of that functionality that I was just gushing over is pretty recent. It was in like one of the last one or two major firmware updates. Beforehand, they largely only acted as trackpads, basically, um,
Hmm.
and they added in those old Steambox uh, haptic features retroactively pretty recently. But I'm glad that they did because it's a really compelling value proposition for the Steam Deck in my humble opinion.
Yeah, it's almost it makes me curious to actually want to go out and shell out some cash and get one.
Yeah,
But
and there's there's a wide variety. It's varying degrees of affordability. So full disclosure, this is kind of on permanent loan to me from my company.
mhm.
So I there's no real money committed to this at this point. Although if for was
Yeah,
whatever reason the company needed it back, I would almost certainly just like fuck it and buy it one for myself.
and on top of that,
It's that cool.
your accounts is you just have to just log out and then carry your games over to whatever your Steam
Yep,
Deck. That's the
exactly,
beauty of it.
because everything is completely cloud based on Steam.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so it's great. Like I actually downloaded and installed Monster Hunter World on my Steam Deck, played it for a bunch, installed it on my PC, and the save files carried over, no effort whatsoever. Like there was just nothing
That's
you needed to do, right?
that's
Um, it was
hilarious.
pretty cool. Um, but anyway, so there's like three models. The really the cheapest one, which is just a standard LED screen with a pretty limited internal storage, is like 300 or $400. That's not bad, right?
Hmm.
Um, it has all the hardware is the same. Otherwise, the haptic pads, all that stuff is the same. Then it jumps up to the OLED model with like 512 gigs of internal storage, and that's like 450. And then the 1 terabyte one, which is the one that I have, is 550. So it's still
Hmm.
cheaper than an iPhone, that's for sure. Um, so by half, right? And the big one, the most expensive one, yeah, is one. Never mind. Sorry, I'm repeating myself. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I mean, it's at this point, like I think we were kind of talking about this before. Like, the Steam Deck is kind of still walking. It's phasing between two dimensions, being a
Yeah.
console or a PC. I mean, because of how exciting that hardware is, I really wish. I always like Steam anyway. I mean, but I don't use it that often. But man, I mean, they really try to innovate, and I like that about
Mm-hmm.
them.
Mm-hmm.
That they're always trying. So I really hope it takes off. But I mean, the fact that they're still making stuff is good. But I wonder when they'll get to that point where it becomes almost like a household name. I don't know if it ever will. I think it'll
I don't
always be
know.
a
Yeah.
niche kind of thing, But yeah.
I think yeah, the challenge with the Steam Deck is like you said, it is sort of trying to walk a fine line, right? I mean,
Hmm.
I think the hardcore of the hardcore PC players have sort of rejected it out of hand because it's not, it's a really cool piece of technology, but it's not bleeding edge, right? Um,
Hmm.
it's not, you can't run a fully modded copy of Cyberpunk 2077 with, full on ray tracing and blah 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 at 120
Yeah.
FPS,
Hmm.
yada yada yada. And
Yeah.
so, the hardcore PC players are like, well, why would I, why do I care about this, right? This is just a console pretending to be a PC. No, thank you, right?
Yeah.
Um, Meanwhile, you've got console players who hear Steam and you hear Valve, and they're like, oh, well, it's just a PC, right? You know,
Yeah.
um,
There's also an intimidation factor too, I think.
yeah,
Like if
sure,
you're a lot of I mean even today, like a lot of console players like just the fact they can just turn it on and play and
right,
not have to be intimidated with some sort of environment or
correct, and
implication of starting like looking at a
yeah,
desktop, it's
yeah,
um
and there is because it's a Linux-based OS running PC games on a proprietary piece of hardware. Some games aren't compatible with it, right? and or some
Yeah.
games like they give you a warning, like we make no claims as to whether or not this game will work on the Steam Deck, right? And so yeah, I mean, I totally and I agree too. It's really nice to be able to turn on my Switch and know that any game that is on there will, with exceptions of course, will run as you expect it to run. Um,
Hmm.
Whereas Valve isn't a walled garden in the same way that Sony or Nintendo or Microsoft is to a lesser extent. Um, it is more like okay, here's this tool, here's everything that you can play with. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, it's not really our responsibility, right? And so yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I can see where that's pretty intimidating for a casual user. I am a mid-grade user, so the technology and futzing with the technology doesn't intimidate me, but I'm also very lazy, and so I don't like having to do that unless I'm really really invested in it. So
Yeah.
you know, but I'm not, I've never really been a PC gamer. I've always been more of a console gamer. So, as a console gamer who has at least some PC sensibilities just because of my technical acumen, um, I can say that this is, for me at least, this is the bar that Nintendo has to beat with whatever their Switch 2 ends up being.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, I'm in the same camp as you. I like just playing games, period. I don't care about, I don't, it's almost like I'm going to use an old 80s reference, but just saying, I mean, just getting caught up in the PC arms race. Every year, you have to just get a new graphics card and install it on your machine, or get a new motherboard,
yeah,
just to keep up with
yeah.
the Joneses next door with their super fast Alienware PC. I just don't, I never, yeah, you and I, we both have the same sensibilities when it comes to games. It's just, if it runs well and I can play and input stuff and it reacts, I'm good.
I mean,
So
and for me, technology has so far outstripped my ability to perceive improvements in fidelity at this
yeah.
point.
Hmm.
My laptop is, I mean, even now it can run most games at max settings, right? And I look at like Helldivers 2, for instance. I run it everything at ultra, and the game runs fine, easily plus 30 frames a second, no slowdown. And I know some people swear to God that if it runs below 60, they can't function. That's just not me, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not here to debate how true that actually is or not, but for me, I really can't tell the difference between 30 frames and 60 frames a second unless it's
Hmm.
in it like an extremely egregious change, sudden change, right? Um,
Hmm.
um, Man, we are having some really weird issues tonight. It keeps dropping. I apologize everybody for the inconsistency on the stream tonight. I don't know why it's so weird.
The
Um,
bummer.
anyway, um, but um, anyway, what was I saying?
We're talking about how hardware has a perception of
Oh
making
yeah,
the
yeah.
games a
So
little too
my
good, or
right.
but yeah.
Yeah. So
But yeah.
Helldivers 2 as an example. I run everything at ultra.
Hmm.
The frame rate is perfectly smooth to me. I've never seen it drop. My computer is far more powerful than a PS5, but I look at Helldivers 2 on PS5 PC and I see absolutely no differences,
No
right?
difference.
No differences. And honestly, like even beyond that, like I'll look at like Gears of or not Gears of War, God of War, right? And that's on
Uh-huh.
PS4 and it's on PS5. I visually I can't see a difference whatsoever at all. Like I am incapable of discerning a difference between those two games. Now, admittedly, again, God of War was built for the PS4 and
Hmm.
upported to the
Hmm.
PS5. So yeah, I get that. But um, even still, even games that were built from the ground up to be on PS5, like the big changes, for instance, Spider-Man, I think is a classic example. I think the biggest boon is just there's no load times. The hardware is so fast that
Yeah.
there's far fewer like loading screens and things of that nature.
But
Um,
I don't want to take us off our path here, but I will say, I mean, just because you brought up Spider-Man,
yeah,
playing Spider-Man 2, I miss the loading screen excuse uh interim like sequences where he's on the subway looking at his
yeah,
phone,
yeah,
or somebody's falling asleep on his. Now I don't. Now when you play PS5, it's just instant, so you don't get a chance to even get any of that kind of comedic
yeah,
kind of relief. I enjoyed that kind of weird side narrative stuff of like when you fast travel, oh, you're gonna go on subway again. Which screen am I gonna get this
Right,
time? And
right,
it
right.
actually cracked me up. I found it really funny.
No, I thought it was really hilarious too. And it's a shame
Yeah,
that
but
that doesn't
Spider-Man 2,
exist. Yeah.
yeah, Spider-Man 2 is gone, so you don't even see him riding the subway anymore. And it also added, and it added, to me, that kind of painted, it kind of kept Spider-Man true to character. Of course, he rides the subway when he wants to fast travel someplace. He doesn't want to web sling there.
Right,
Because he's other people.
right.
It was such an endearing and thoughtful thing that they did for a loading screen. But yeah, but because of technology, yeah, it's so fast
Yeah.
you don't even see that anymore. You're just next part of the city and swinging. Which is a
Which,
shame. Anyways,
and
I just
if
wanted to
any,
do an aside there.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think, yeah, to that point, you do lose something in the translation a little bit. But for me, that's the biggest value proposition of better hardware is removing load times. It's technical back
Hmm.
end stuff because at this point, visual fidelity is as good as I could ever want it to be. And I'm getting old, and my tastes are my I guess maybe my standards are getting lower, or my tolerance, or whatever. I don't know. Whatever you want to say. Maybe the youth have a much more um, nuanced perspective on graphics that I don't have. But for
Hmm.
me at least, I can't speak to the population at large, but for me at least, the hardware advancements such as they aren't producing anything visually that I care about at all.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Um,
So,
I think the only thing really left, um, like when you walk in for example, you walk in a Costco and you see that really high fidelity, bright kind of colors when they're showing off their OLED TVs or
yeah.
whatever. I mean, I feel like I haven't been wowed by that yet in a game to where I'm blown away like that way, but I'm still blown away by just where we are in game land with games where they're just great.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm waiting for that moment, but I don't know when that's going to come. But to generate that many 4,000 pixels by whatever it is, or
Yeah.
8K TV, whatever they're
8K.
doing,
Yeah.
yeah,
And the problem
that's really
is,
the only thing left.
yeah, for me, I'll be honest, I can rarely tell the difference between 1080p and 4K. Rarely.
Mhm.
Um, and maybe it's because I'm not using devices that are fully utilizing that resolution capability. I don't know. Um, but anyway, like I'll watch a 4K Blu-ray, and then I'll watch a different movie that's only regular Blu-ray, like 1080p, I
Mhm.
think was the native
Mhm.
resolution for Blu-ray. And if they're encoded properly, they both look phenomenally good, right? There is a
Yeah.
point, it's sort of an approximation, but you can you can sort of calculate what the resolution of human vision is.
Yeah.
And our displays are getting to the point that they are displaying information at the resolution of our eyes,
Or
right?
even beyond it, right? Have
Right.
they not surpassed it? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I think 8K is basically just our is the resolution of our eyes, basically.
Okay. Hmm.
And if that's the case, then there's literally no point in producing, aside from it being a marketing blurb, there's no point in producing anything at a higher resolution because we will be incapable of perceiving it, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so we are fast approaching a point of our own limits as human beings will impact the types of technology that will innovate, right? Because if 8K is, you know, effectively the resolution of the human eye, then you can make a 12K TV, but we won't be able to tell the difference, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I think also, and I think you and I are both of the same, you know, being brought up in games. We've seen pretty much all aspects of games, like where they're just giant boxes on the screen moving around to
oh
where we're
yeah,
at today.
yeah. I
So no matter
mean,
what, and it feels like they still. I mean, people like pixel based games are still popular,
hmm
and I think it's just a general thing that speaks to a lot of people. To where you still don't need to have the fanciest schmanciest stuff to make a great game. There's always a lot of wiggle room between
hmm
those boxes and cyberpunk that you were talking about before.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that that is there is I think that that's great, honestly. I love that
Yeah.
developers and artists have so much freedom these days to make exactly the game that they want to see made. And all budgets are welcome. And I mean, you take a
Hmm.
game like Animal Well, which I thought was overrated personally, but it's the newest Metroidvania indie darling. Um,
Okay.
and I thought it was fine. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I didn't beat it either. And I haven't gone back. I got to like the last area, got distracted by Paper Mario, and I'm like, I probably want to replay this again. It
Hmm.
was done by one guy. It took him 7 years to make. Um, its footprint is 33 megabytes. That's it. Right. It's a tiny little game,
Wow.
and he is a millionaire now. He charged, he's reasonable. I think it's a reasonable price for what the product is. It costs $25.
Uh-huh.
Um, and he's made bank, right? On a game that's footprint is 33 megs. Meanwhile, Call of Duty Black Ops 6 just got announced, and the scuttlebutt is that its hard drive footprint is 306 gigabytes, right?
Why? For those, it's for those high fidelity maps.
It
That's why.
is.
Like
It
all those
is.
texture maps,
Right, exactly.
because
Yeah, because
oh
famously,
man.
Call of Duty, they don't compress their textures, and that's how they do the ultra high res stuff. Like all of their textures are rendered in like 4K or something like that. And
Hmm.
so it doesn't surprise me that the game's footprint is 308 gigabytes, right? Um, but that's what the audience wants. That's what the consumers want though, right? Like 308
Yeah.
gigabytes is a reasonable value proposition for them. Um, and so it is I just those are two very extreme examples, but they're both like Animal Well has been extremely successful, and there's no doubt that Black Ops 6 is going to be wildly successful, right?
Yeah.
um so I think that that's cool. I'm glad that there is that level of flexibility and opportunity to make the game you want to make and play the game you want to play.
With Animal Well, it's just you said it's a Metroidvania. It's just a typical run-of-the-mill kind of a
It's,
game.
I mean, I think the most unique thing about it is there's no direct combat. Your character, which is effectively just a Monster Hunter slime, um,
Okay.
can't attack. He gets unique abilities, and I will give Animal Well this: the abilities that you unlock in that game are pretty fun. Some of them are really really clever, um,
Hmm.
but there's too much physics platforming for my taste. In physics platforming is this like I know what you want me to do, game. The reason I can't do this is because your physics system is frustrating, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Trine is another franchise that is like famous for easily grokkable puzzles that are impossible to solve because you're fighting the physics engine, not thinking about the
Hmm.
puzzle. And I got
Yeah.
that a lot with Animal Well, particularly in
Okay.
the boss encounters, which are boss encounters, and basically what they are just locked rooms where you have to repeat the same objective 4 or 5 times until the boss
Okay.
dies, right? But there's no actual combat. Your slime doesn't shoot guns. All of its weapons are non-lethal. None of them are weapons. They're like frisbees and yo-yos and slinkies and things like that.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think that that is a pretty unique proposition, but it's not the only Metroidvania I've played that was not combat focused. I remember way back when on the 360, back when it was still called Xbox Arcade, this Metroidvania called Insanely Twisted Shadow Planet, where you
Hmm.
played as a UFO. And again, you didn't really have a lot of weapons. It was more about the utilities that you got and how you utilized them into the space, right?
Hmm.
I think the other interesting, clever thing about the game is how vast majority of it is all procedurally generated. There's not a
Hmm.
lot of like, there is art assets and things like that, but he really does use physics to generate a lot of the motion and sense of dynamism of the game world. It's all just,
Hmm.
it's all engine based stuff. It's not art asset based stuff. So,
Hmm.
um, so anyway, yeah, I don't know that that really had any point beyond that. That's just where it ended.
I was just picking your brain about the game because I've seen blurbs about it and stuff like that, and so I'm always happy to hear about that magical indie developer out there struggling to make a game and then have some success, that's great. I'm so happy
Mm-hmm.
for that dev. That's
Mm-hmm.
terrific.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's a whole other thing to kind of think about the fact that we have to call it a Metrovania or a boomer shooter or anything now. Like we're still kind of waiting for that next game that's gonna
I
wow me.
agree.
That it
Yeah.
feels like we're kind of just treading water now. We're kind of just sort of plateaued and we're just waiting for a reskin of another Metroidvania game. And then this one's set in Candyland,
Right.
and they've already been, and I think they've already been kind of done at this point. So I feel like I've played this game, been and done that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Um,
And there is a problem with that, I think, and I think that problem exists on in the indie space. It exists in the double A space. It exists in the triple A space. Indies tend to fall into the Metroidvania trap very easily, or
mhm,
the lone child in a dark world,
yeah,
fleeing from existential monsters, and the whole thing is a metaphor of depression. Like, how many fucking
yeah,
games have we seen
mhm,
that are that, right? And that's one thing I will say
mhm,
about Animal Well is it doesn't give me the impression that that's the tropes it's chasing. Um, Maybe it is, and I just wasn't paying close enough attention, but it didn't seem like that was the case.
mhm,
Um, so whereas whereas first person, I mean, rather, AAA has a very a problem in the standpoint of like it can't get past open world games, and not just that it can't get past open world games. Every open world games uses the same set of mechanics without any modification whatsoever, and they slap a
mhm,
new coat of paint on it, and they slap a ostensibly a relatively fresh story on it, and then just ship it out again, right? And so I don't know. I mean, I don't really know that there's anything necessarily wrong with that, or if there's even a solution to it, right? But judging
mhm,
by the amount of layoffs that have occurred recently, judging um, by sort of the fatigue that I seem to sense from a lot of video game players lately, I don't know. I think that there is going to come a point soon where the people who make games are going to need to really go, okay, we got to do something different here because we're losing people's interest, right?
yeah,
But I mean, I don't want to single out video games because I think most entertainment mediums are in a kind of a rut right now, a creative rut, where everybody is sort of trading on the familiar instead of trying to um, see how they can spin it or create something interesting with the tools that they have, if that makes any sense.
yeah. I don't know. I have faith that we'll see the next kind of. I mean, it feels like the main thing that's happening now is innovation is happening with hardware, like what you're just describing with Steam Deck, or Nintendo's been risking to try different things like the Wii U and falling apart after that, making a sequel to the Wii, which was terrific.
Yeah.
So I have faith that games will still keep evolving and change things up. But yeah, I think we are kind of in an interesting spot right now, where everything's very samey and AAA studios and big studios are chasing after live service as live service games and stuff like that because of Fortnite, and etc. But yeah, I'll still keep playing.
Yeah.
I'm busy playing Monster Train right now. I'm obsessed with that game. It's just a card-based deck building kind of game. Again,
Okay.
another trophy, no, another template kind of game. You build your deck and you go through. But it's holding my interest enough to keep playing it. I thoroughly am enjoying it. But yeah, I'm sure I'll move on to other games. I still have Xenoblade Chronicles,
Mm-hmm.
whatever to play
Mm-hmm.
based on your suggestions. So I'll keep there's plenty to play that are even though they are based on something that we've seen before. There's still some
I
pretty
don't,
interesting.
yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with standing on the shoulders of giants, right? That I
Mm-hmm.
think that that's
Hmm.
great. I think the problem with a lot of indie games and I mean all games is that they're not so much standing on the shoulders of giants as crawling into their jacket pockets, right?
Hmm.
And I think that that's the real difference. Um,
Yeah.
is taking what came before and making it bigger, making it better, changing it in novel and interesting ways versus just putting a new coat of paint on something that's already been done over and over again, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, I think we'll call it there. We've been going for a good 45 minutes at this point.
Yeah, and at this point, I've got the profile done for Mayor. It's this took a while. I mean, I haven't been in character design mode in a while, but man, it exercised my character muscles.
Mm,
As you may have saw, I was actually using guides to make sure I was lining things up right, as I was driving across, and I'm still kind of noodling a little bit, even as we were finished wrapping up our stream. But yeah, I've got at least a pretty good working version for Mayor profile, and for next week, I will work on. I'll actually decide whether to actually change this up or maybe use the other one, but I'll drop it in and I'll play with it and
okay.
go from there.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, we'll call it there for the evening. If you want to head on over to calamityjane.rocks, that'll take you to our Patreon site. Please consider joining us on making this cartoon a reality. You can also find us on YouTube and Facebook, which presumably you have since you're watching this stream. We're also on Instagram at Calamity Jane Salamander. Head on over there and check us out. We post fun stuff from time to time over there. Over there, mostly it's like behind the scenes stuff, concept art, sketches. James does the art, and I wax intellectual about all of it. Anyway, I think life is returning to a dull roar here on both our fronts, and we will actually this time, honestly, genuinely be back next Monday at the same Calamity time, same Calamity channel. Until then, stay safe out there, everybody, and we will see you soon. Good night.